All right, we're back. Okay, so I changed the resolution and frame rates of the stream, and it's still over 100% utilized, utilizing the CPU, but it's a lot better than it was. So in my testing, it seems like this will work. So let's give it a shot. Um, we're going to basically redo the stream from this morning. So if you missed it or had the problems with the streams that I saw, no problem. We're redoing it right now. So um, the stream that I tried to do was a simple first app that you would build with Xamarin just to get to know Xamarin a bit better. So we're going to recreate that now in Writer. So the first step here is to create a new solution using the Blank Forms app. Um, we don't actually have the example project, at least that I can find in Writer, so there's no templates to choose from. Um, or I guess it says template JetBrains, so I don't know if they have some other templates, but whatever project it creates is fine. It's just a simple view with a single label, I believe. So we're going to go with that. I'm going to put this in the same folder as this morning, and we'll just call it first app and go with the default settings, which will work for Android and iOS. And it uses Xamarin Forms instead of native. So go ahead and create that. All right, so it should sync a lot faster now. Like I said, CPU is still 126% utilized now. JetBrains takes up a lot when it first starts up, so 311%, but it should die down here in a second after it loads up. Let's see. Yeah, so now it's down to 129. I'm hoping it goes even lower than that. There we go, 51%. OBS is up a bit. But like I said, hopefully the stream is watchable now, and hopefully my IDEs don't just halt like they were before. So the first thing that the tutorial recommends that you do is reload the Nuget dependencies. They call it restore in this case. So let me just check. Maybe you can see this here. Yeah, see it says restore Nuget packages. So, the equivalent of that would be in Writer would be right clicking here and saying properties and no, I'm sorry, not properties. Right click and then saying where's Nuget? Nuget tools? No, that's not it. Sorry, is it this one or yeah, it's supposed to be under here. Unload, reload, manage Nuget packages. I thought there was a maybe it's this button. Okay, refresh. Yeah, I don't see it in the context menu, but refresh is the equivalent of restore as far as I know. So we'll do a restore. Really though, I think Writer's actually pretty good about getting the latest libraries. In fact, it doesn't automatically update them. So it shows that it's still using the 4.4 forms, but it sees that there's a pre-release 5.0. For our needs, we'll just go with 4.4 unless we run into problems. Now, if you try to build the Android app, which is the default project that builds here, you're going to get an error, at least I do, on my Mac. And we talked about this morning how to resolve that. I have a workaround for it. So I'll just reproduce the error real quick to show you that it's still happening on my system. All right, so the build didn't take too long. Emulator. All right, just about there. That should try to install the application. It's going to get some error, I think, about privileges or something like that. We'll see in a second here. Installing selected projects. This is where the IDE would just crash before. Not crash, but halt, which is deadlock. All right, so there's the error we expected. Excuse me. Deployment failed, right? So it has to do with how it's trying to deploy. It's trying to deploy rapidly or something like that. So you actually want to right click on the Android app itself and go to properties, and under debug, since we are building for debug, you want to uncheck use fast assembly deployment. So we don't actually need that. Deployment's fast enough without it, and it causes this issue when you have it checked. I don't know exactly why. I saw in Stack Overflow that this was the suggested workaround. Don't know when they're going to fix it. I don't know what exactly on my system causes it. But if you have the same error, it also says permission denied here. If you have that same error, just go ahead and uncheck that option in properties and then rebuild. All right, and to give you an idea of what it's building, we'll actually go into first app, not the first app.android or first app.ios, but first app, and we'll look at the main page XAML. So it's like XML, but I think it's Microsoft's version of declarative type syntax for building UIs. So as I mentioned in the earlier stream, I don't know if you guys caught that part or not, but there's this outer stack layout tag here, and inside that is a label with the text that says welcome to Xamarin Forms. Now if you built this project in Visual Studio Mac, you would get something different. You'd have a few different labels, but it's essentially just a one-page app, very simple. And the stack layout is Xamarin specific. You wouldn't see this exact layout in iOS or Android, so that's kind of why we're doing the Xamarin tutorials, to understand these Xamarin specific things like this. So that app built, if I bring up the emulator, you'll see that's exactly what it is. It's a single form, or it's a single label on this one-page app. Now iOS would build the same thing, but I'm not going to run that just yet. Instead, let's do the next step in the tutorial. It's supposed to be a 5-minute tutorial. Let's check that out and see if that's actually the case. So the way this first app of theirs works is you're going to add a new button, and when it's clicked, it's going to increment a counter. So they add that in the XAML itself. So this button here is going to be whatever button iOS or Android uses. So the views they use underneath, it gets translated somehow to show up on those individual devices. But this goes in the XAML file, which is written once and then applied to all the projects that are dependent on it, Android and iOS in this case. So if I copy that syntax there, we want to add a button. We can leave the label and just put it underneath that in this stack layout, and it should work. Now there's two elements to this button. There's the text that it displays, in this case click me, and there's a click handler function reference. So we need this function as well. So that code, I can copy that as well, but it's a simple function, and this goes in the C# version of main page XAML. So we can find that here in this drop down. So you'll see the way this works is it's got a namespace. It's just a C# class, and it's got this looks like some kind of initiation function, method, whatever, called main page that initializes a component. That's just a Xamarin call. So somewhere underneath this function, we want to paste in this one. So this creates a variable called count, and then increments it every time handle clicked is called. Now this call requires a sender object, or an object to be passed in that they call sender, and also some system args. I think these have to do with, event arguments, In this case, we don't use this parameter at all. We just use the sender. Now, what is this object? Well, in our case, it's a button because that's what the XAML has tied to that function, right? It's a button view. So it gets cast to a button. That's what this is doing. This is casting sender from an object to a button. And that allows us to access the text attribute on that view and set it to this string. Now this string has this syntax here with the $sign and the parentheses here so that we can insert the variable count. And so you do that by just wrapping it in curly braces. And count is the name we set here. If I called this count2, this would have to be count2. The increment would have to be count2, right? So fairly simple function. It increments by 1. That's what this plus plus does, the variable. And then it sets the text of the button to you clicked X times, where X is the current value of count. So very simple, kind of hacky. Let's run it and see what it does. So I'm going to stop and rerun. So there was no button. I just inserted that button tag at the bottom of the stack layout, as they call it, and it ends up showing up here at the bottom. And iOS, you'll see, will look like an iOS button. So this is the standard out-of-the-box Android-looking button that you normally see. We can experiment later with changing this to a more material look using some variation of that button or some configuration, which I don't know how to do in Xamarin yet. So we'll figure that out in a later tutorial. But for now, let's see if this does what it's supposed to. I say click me and it changes to you clicked 1 times. It's correct, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, and this is just a local variable, so relaunching it, it's going to clear that back to click me, and click again, it's 1 times. So that works as expected, and I saw this in the tutorial as well. If I want to make iOS the default project to run, I could just do the drop down here like I normally do, or supposedly you can right click this and you could say, at least in Visual Studio, now that I think about it, maybe they don't have this in Writer, but there's supposed to be a way to mark this as the app to run. Okay, so I don't see that, but that's fine. We'll just run it here, and it should change this drop down to iOS, which it does. I did get an error though, said incompatible device selected. So this is iPhone 11. I'm not sure what this project's set up for. Let's go with an older device, try running from here, see if that works. So while that builds, why didn't it work with iOS 11? Let's see, this info.plist, does that tell us? 13.2 is the minimum OS. Okay, so does that mean we need to go higher? This is working now. Seems to be working. Let's see what happens. Entitlement plist. You can put your version code here, it looks like. Other properties, assembly info. Alright, so this looks like this might be actual tags or configurations that you would set on an iOS app. Major and minor version. Under here, you can set your company name, the name of the product, your copyright. All right, so that works. And since we already made the change to main page and main page.cs, this code written once here is going to work for both Android and iOS. And how does that work? Well, because Android and iOS both have dependencies on First App, the main project here. You can see that under Dependencies, Projects, First App. I click that, takes me here. Same thing with the iOS version, Dependencies, Projects, dependent on First App. So that's kind of how a solution works. Have these sub-projects, they can depend on each other. Let's look at here's the iOS version. We can compare them actually. This is Android on the left, iOS on the right. See how the button's different. This is more native to iOS. Even the fonts are different. This one's more bold. But we click that, text changes, you click me 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. So same thing you would expect. I didn't kill the app, so it still remembers the state of that variable. But if I were to, if I were to kill the app, relaunch, it would reload, click me 1 time, 2 time, 3 time. So that's it for this first app. You guys can try this out yourself. This is the docs.microsoft.com website using the first app tutorial here under Get Started. And next we'll do some more tutorials. We'll skip ahead if it's too basic. I want to get into stuff that we don't know and try to learn something every time we do one of these videos. But go ahead and comment down below if you learned something new like I did. And if not, you can let me know that too. But thanks for watching, and please thumbs up and subscribe. And I hope to see you again on the next one.